This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Make it clear that the views expressed by our host are not considered the official stance of MBR views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Find us on the web.
Good knowing exactly where to go with the football.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you in part by Military Broadcast Radio, giving a voice to veterans. If you'd like to learn more about MBR, what they do, and even potentially help donate and whatnot, please scan that little QR code right here at the bottom to learn more about it. Got a pretty good show for you tonight. We're going to talk about Dan Hurley turning down the Lakers' offer to be their head coach. We're also going to talk about Aaron Rodgers missing out on the Jets minicamp. And then continuing with the Jets as well as the AFC East for the NFL, we're going to break down the schedule of each of those four teams. So we'll get right into it with Dan Hurley turning down the Lakers' offer to be their head coach. He was offered a 6-year, $70 million offer to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I'm not surprised that Dan Hurley actually turned this offer down. When you look at the Lakers the last few years, with the exception of the COVID year where they ended up winning the championship, there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of asterisks with that championship because it was with COVID. It was the fact that there was a massive break for a few months. Everybody came back, essentially started off fresh as to what they would have had the season basically begun anew, and they went into the playoffs just straight from there. The Lakers have been pretty unsuccessful. Now, they did have a year where they end up actually going to the Western Conference Finals. They get pretty close, but ultimately end up losing overall. And so the Lakers have been on search for a head coach through the entire time. They actually have the most head coaches over the span of the last 4 years as far as looking for their new replacement, especially compared to when they had Mark Jackson as their head coach. They've tried to find somebody new. So they've now turned to the men's college basketball world and trying to hire Dan Hurley, who is just coming off of back-to-back national championship wins over in UConn. I'm going to be 100% honest. I understand why Dan actually turned down this offer from the Lakers. When you sit down and look at it, it's 6 years, it's $70 million. So it's roughly just under $10 million a year. I think if I do my math right, it's about $9.5 million, maybe even $9.2 million. Whereas some of the highest paid college basketball coaches are making about $10.5 million. So if anything, it was really a low ball offer to him, especially considering what he's been able to do just with UConn, with a record of 141-58 and back-to-back national titles for the last 2 years. And if I'm Dan Hurley, if I look at the Lakers because everybody wants to potentially move up when they're in the college level. They want to try to move up to the pros. But there also does come a point where you have to know where your success is at. You have to know that, hey, I'm doing really well here. I can work with kids that are a little bit more open. They're younger. They're trying to figure themselves out in life. I don't want to have to go to the NBA to deal with grown men that have their own families, have their own lives outside of this. And it's going to be harder for me to have to negotiate with them than it is if I'm getting a kid that's straight out of high school coming into college and they're still trying to figure out what they want. Do they want to make a lot of money? Do they want to win championships? Do they want to win both? It's easier for him to recruit and work with that than it is to try to tell somebody who, Dan Hurley's 51. In this case, if he was to go to the Lakers and go with LeBron James is 39, almost 40, if right at 40. So he's only about 10 years older than him. It's going to be hard for him to look at LeBron and say, hey, man, you have to buy into my system because this is what works, because LeBron has been successful. Not only that, LeBron has essentially ruined this roster for the last 4 years because, honestly, that's what LeBron does. No disrespect to him because of how good he's been in the NBA for the last few years. He knows how to win. However, if we look back at his track record, you have the Miami Heat. He actually came to the Heat when he was still pretty young. They had a pretty young core. They had a lot of good players that could rotate in and out. So when he left Miami, he didn't really leave them in shambles. However, when he goes to Cleveland, they have a young guy there by the name of Kyrie Irving. LeBron steps back in, takes back over. He's more older. He's more mature. He takes over the team, and then he starts getting rid of a lot of these young guys because he doesn't want to try to teach them. He doesn't want to try to mentor them. He doesn't want to try to get them to where he wants them to be at for his level. So what does he do? He brings in a lot of old veterans. He brings in a lot of old guys. Now, albeit he's successful because at the time he was competing in a very weak Eastern Conference for the NBA. Well, now he's older. He goes to the Lakers. Now, albeit he's still in his prime, they're able to get AD. They're able to make a couple other moves with veteran guys. He's able to make it work, and they're able to finally win a championship in Los Angeles. However, ever since then, it's back to where he was before with he's trying to get older guys. He doesn't really want to make it work with some of the younger kids now, albeit they've had to because, A, the Lakers don't have anything to really trade as far as draft pick goes. They don't really have the money to sign anybody different. And a lot of these superstar players that would potentially sign know that they would have to take a back seat and a back step to LeBron James as a whole. So I understand why Dan Hurley wouldn't want to put up with that. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want to put up with that either. If I'm a successful college basketball coach coming into a pro league where you have a player like LeBron James's caliber, who's going to have a lot of say, a lot of dictation in who you bring into the roster. You're not going to be able to bring in a lot of guys to potentially buy into your system and set yourself up for success. I wouldn't want that. On top of it all, you have probably one of the most famous, NBA brands with the Lakers there. It comes with a lot of high expectations. They expect you to make the playoffs. They expect you to have deep runs in the playoffs. Now, some of the fans might be a little bit tempered in the fact of, okay, maybe it's a little bit more realistic of, we know we're going to have down years. We have to kind of temper expectations. If we can get to the playoffs, that's kind of it's a good thing. However, a lot of these older Laker fans aren't going to sit well with that. Therefore, the ownership is going to feel that pressure a lot quicker. So if I'm him, I wouldn't want to try to put up with that mess. And for anybody who does follow sports, or if you don't, when you're a head coach of honestly any type of team or organization, it takes about 2 to 3 years at minimum to kind of get guys that, know your system. They know what the expectations from you are into that locker room and get an understanding of what you want and what you expect in order for you to truly find out, okay, can you do it at the next level or not? And if I'm Dan Hurley, I wouldn't want to try to tarnish my reputation by doing that. He does remind me a lot of Nick Saban. He's one of, if not probably the best college basketball coach in men's basketball as it stands currently right now. Why would I want to try and ruin a good thing? Go to a team where I not only have to reprove myself and rebuild my legacy, but then try to also fight with, a superstar that's aging, that if he trades him, he's going to get a lot of backlash. If he cuts him, he's going to get a lot of backlash. But also if he keeps him, he's going to get a lot of backlash because why are you keeping a guy that's in his 40s that's, been the megastar of the entire league? when realistically, if you sat down and looked at it and said, okay, yes, he's still good, he still produces, he's still playing at a high level, he's not the guy that's going to be able to carry you and get you up into a championship potential or even a championship bubble again. So I totally get it. I don't blame you for not taking it. There's a rumor that another as well is also trying to step into one of the highest paid college basketball coaches. Right now, Bill Self, the head coach of Kansas, is the highest at $10.5 million per year, and it's expected that he's actually going to even surpass that. We are going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Aaron Rodgers misses minicamp for the New York Jets. What does that mean for the Jets? Is it really that big of a deal, or is it not? Find out here in just a little bit.
The fact that our patriotism in America is dwindling, I really wanted to start the American AF movement. Freedom is fragile, very fragile. It takes a certain level of intestinal fortitude to stand up and say and do the right thing to preserve the freedoms that so many have paid a large price for. About being in the military, and that recruiter said, it's not Biden's army, it's your army, it's his army, it's his army, it's all of our army.
American tactical. American as
All right, we are back, and thanks to LT Defense for that commercial. If you want a lot of really good military gear, a lot of good gear overall, please check them out. They have a lot of good stuff at pretty good prices. It also helps out a veteran owner as well as a fellow podcaster here on MBR, so I would greatly appreciate it if you check them out and check out some of the product that she has, because it's really good, I'm not going to lie. So we are back. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers missing the minicamp for the New York Jets. There's been a lot of kind of mini back and forth on this. It's the NFL offseason. It's a little bit slow. People are kind of looking for anything and everything that they want to talk about as far as NFL news, because we still have to get through July, and then August finally starts. We finally get some preseason games. But up until then, we kind of have to deal with little stuff like this as far as him not showing up to mandatory minicamp. Now, the key word in that is mandatory, but each team will actually do minicamps differently. There's been a lot of previous NFL players have stated that some of the minicamps, they actually do practices as far as offense versus defense. There's even some that basically it's not necessarily a meet and greet, but it's more of an opportunity for a lot of the rookies, a lot of the young guys to be able to come in, kind of, practice against each other. Some of them are team building activities like paintball, bowling, different things like that. And a lot of the veteran guys are just there kind of to offer advice, kind of, put their name out there, show that they're the leaders of the locker room and whatnot. So not really a whole lot goes on with some of these mini camps, and the fact that Aaron Rodgers missed it. Now, for anybody who is new to the show, I am not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan by no stretch of the imagination. He's prima donna. He's older. He's managed to get to and win one Super Bowl. However, everybody tries to tell me he's one of the greatest of all time to do it. Not necessarily arguing he might be one of the greatest to do it. However, it says a lot when you're supposed to be one of those guys. However, you've only been to one Super Bowl. You've had multiple opportunities to get to other Super Bowls with extremely talented teams. And apparently you're not the guy that can get them over the hump to get them to that next step again, like you did 13 years ago when you finally won your first one. So to be 100% honest, I am actually going to defend Aaron on this. He is actually scheduled. He is in vacation overseas. I don't exactly know where overseas, but that's where he's currently taking a vacation at. And there's a lot of, he needs to be there as far as having a veteran presence. He only lasted 4 plays last year before getting the freak Achilles injury. This doesn't really make a massive difference. When preseason comes around, more actual practices start. That's when I would want to see Aaron Rodgers there, trying to be able to build that chemistry. He's already built the chemistry with Garrett Wilson. We kind of already saw that not only early in the season last year, but also even in the offseason. You could tell that the connection and the bond was definitely there. He already has a connection with Alan Lazard that he had in Green Bay. They have made a couple other free agent acquisitions as far as their offensive line and whatnot, which is one of their biggest issues that they had. So I'm not super worried about Aaron Rodgers not showing up to minicamp. I don't think this is something that is going to overall affect how he does. when the season starts, the biggest thing that I have for them is, can he stay healthy and can that offensive line actually protect him? That was the biggest question I had with them last year when Aaron Rodgers finally got traded to the Jets and they looked at the roster on paper. Defensively, they're absolutely stacked. You have Breece Hall at running back, Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. They signed Lazard. You have Rodgers. On paper, they should have been a pretty decent team overall. Obviously, the injury happened. The offensive line, though, is where I had a lot of questions. You have Mekhi Becton. He was a first-round talent. Supposed to be an absolute stud. I believe he's 6'7" or 6'8", over 300 pounds. He's had a ton of injury issues. They drafted Elijah Vera Tucker, who was actually pretty good up until he got hurt. They've had a rotation at center. I don't know who they had at right guard off the top of my head. And then they also have Dwayne Brown at right tackle, who at the time was 41 years old. So another very old and injury-prone right tackle as well. So it was already a recipe that was made for disaster to start before the season even really got going, and it was truly evident there. Now, they did end up signing Tyron Smith in free agency, probably one of their biggest signings at left tackle. He is an absolute star. I watched him a lot in Dallas. He's a massive dude, and when he's healthy, he's one of the all-time greats at being a left tackle. However, he hasn't played a full season in almost 10 years. 2015 was the last time he played 16 games. Now the season has extended to 17. I don't think you're going to get that many out of him. You might get 10 games at most, but for the most part, he's probably going to be sitting, I would say, at least half the season, if not more, on the bench. Now, if you can maybe tread water and be above that, you might have a pretty decent shot as far as competing for the division at least. And I'll dive into that here in a little bit. I think the Bills took a pretty massive step back. I think the Dolphins took a massive step back, and the Patriots are still rebuilding post Tom Brady. So I think the opportunity and the potential is there for the Jets. The taking is potentially there. However, the biggest question is going to be the entirety and the healthiness of this New York Jets team and how well they can actually do. But we'll see how that actually goes, though. I am excited, though, to see if Rodgers really can do it, as far as, can he prove that he's the guy? Can he take the Jets back to the playoffs, somewhere that they haven't been in over a decade? They actually hold currently the longest playoff drought stretch for an NFL team. Now that the Detroit Lions finally made it, pretty much everybody else in the last few years has made it within the last decade, and they haven't made it since 2010. So it'll be interesting to see if Aaron can actually lead the Jets to doing that or not. But we will find out. One more quick commercial break before we dive into all of the schedule breakdowns for the AFC East teams, and we will be right back.
Too big, wanting to grow up way too quick, searching for spotlights since I was 6. Hello, my name is Dream Too Big. Hello, my name is way too loud. My voice can cut right through the crowd. Got made fun of for it, but who's laughing now? Hello, my name is way too loud. I know I've had my moments and I've had heartaches. God is making miracles out of my mistakes. You can say I won't make it, and I can tell you that I don't really care. 'Cause hello, my name is going somewhere. Far. Lost all my words in a mason jar. Locked eyes with a stranger at the end of the bar. Hello, my name is, you'll go far. Well, hello, my name You're never gonna leave the ground. You can tell us all about it when you come back around. Hello, my name is Get Knocked Down. Hello, my name is Stand Back Up. Keep moving even when it gets rough. I've given so much, but I ain't giving up. Hello, my name is Stand Back Up. I know I've had my moments and I've had heartaches, but God is making miracles out of my mistakes. You can say I won't make it, and I can tell you that I don't really care. 'Cause hello, my name is going somewhere. Going somewhere. Oh, it's going
All right, welcome back into Inside the Hoosier Mind. We are back to talk about the AFC East and my predictions for how their schedules are going to go for each individual team. We're going to start alphabetically with the Buffalo Bills. They had a pretty bad offseason as far as they cut their entire defense. They traded their number one wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. They did draft Keon Coleman, which was, to me, honestly, a pretty decent signing. They also, I believe, picked up Chase Claypool, if I remember correctly. Not an overly huge fan of that. I mean, it works, I guess, but if it was me, I would not have picked Chase Claypool as the guy to help Josh Allen potentially get over the hump as far as beating the Kansas City Chiefs and even making a deep playoff run. But they actually start out the season. They host the Arizona Cardinals. I think that'll be a pretty easy win for Buffalo. Then they immediately travel to Miami the following week. I'm going to probably give them an L for Miami, mainly because Miami's offense is still going to be pretty potent. Now their defense is also taking a step back, losing Christian Wilkins to the Las Vegas Raiders. But I mean, it is still a division game. However, it's in Miami. And Miami tends to do pretty well at home, and especially during the warm weather and early on in the season. So I'm going to give Miami the win on that. Then they host Jacksonville. I don't really know what to make of Jacksonville yet. Jacksonville is kind of they're a little bit of a mystery as far as how well is Trevor Lawrence going to do. They ended up losing Calvin Ridley in a free agency to Tennessee. Now they did draft Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I really liked watching him last year. He was definitely a part of that 1-2 punch between him and Malik Neighbors with Jayden Daniels at quarterback. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence is able to take the next step forward, and as well as Trevor Etienne. Evan Ingram seemed to have finally found a place there in Jacksonville at tight end. So hopefully Jacksonville is able to finally take the right step forward. I'm going to give the win to Buffalo just purely based on Josh Allen over Trevor Lawrence at the current moment. But that Jacksonville defense will probably help keep them in the game quite a bit. Now, this is where the Bills' schedule actually gets pretty tough. They go to Baltimore as well. That's in their first 4 games. I'm going to have them losing to Baltimore, so I'm going to have them sitting by week 4 at 2-2. Then they go to Houston to face the Texans. That'll be a revenge game for Stephon Diggs. CJ Stroud is expected to continue to grow as well as take another step forward. I don't foresee him having a sophomore slump, so I'm going to give the Houston Texans a win on that. So I have the Bills sitting at 2-3. And then they travel just down the road to face the New York Jets. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I'll give the Jets the win on this. The Jets have the better defense. Potentially, the Jets also have the better offense. So I'm going to give the Jets the win. So that would leave the Bills sitting at 2-4 here at the beginning part of the season. Then they host Tennessee. I'm going to give the Bills the win just because I don't trust Will Levis that much yet. He had a pretty decent rookie year for the little bit that he started. They definitely gave him a lot more weapons. However, it's still kind of early on in the season, so that may or may not change. But overall, as far as the new additions with Tony Pollard, they also did get Calvin Ridley. They still have DeAndre Hopkins and whatnot. The defense is still a little bit sus at Tennessee, and they also have a new head coach as well. So I'm going to give Buffalo the win there. They travel to Seattle. I think it's fairly safe to say Buffalo will probably win that game just because I don't trust Geno Smith at quarterback. I don't know if he's necessarily that guy that can elevate Seattle to do that much more. However, Seattle does have a triple-headed monster at wide receiver with DK Metcalf. You have Tyler Lockett as well as Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I'm going to give it to Buffalo just purely as the quarterback. However, with it being at Seattle, it'll probably be a fairly close game. Then they host Miami. Now it'll be cold. Miami tends to not do extremely well in the cold to start with anyway. So I'm going to give Buffalo the win there. Now they travel to Indianapolis. If Anthony Richardson is healthy, I would probably give this win to the Colts. Again, simply a better defense. I think offensively Indianapolis will be better as well. And I have a lot of questions as far as how well can Buffalo be with that defense, considering all of their pieces are new in the secondary. And then they unfortunately have to host Kansas City all before their bye. That's definitely going to be a pretty easy loss for them, considering Kansas City will still have Xavier Worthy. They may or may not have Rashid Rice back by then. They'll probably still have Travis Kelce as well as Patrick Mahomes, barring any type of major injury and whatnot. So the Bills are going to struggle as they come into their bye week. And then probably the toughest part of their schedule here at the beginning part of December. They do have to host San Francisco. I'm going to give San Francisco the win. They have to then travel to the Rams, who the Rams are actually a lot better than what people thought last year. They did a lot better than what I thought they were going to do with Matt Stafford. Barring Matt Stafford being injured, I could honestly see the Rams taking a win in that. Then they travel to Detroit to face the Lions. I'm going to give the Lions a win, and then they end up actually hosting the Patriots. I'm going to give the Buffalo the win. Then they host the Jets. I'm going to give probably the Jets the win. The Jets will probably sweep them this year, again, barring any injuries. I think at that point, the Jets will probably also be vying for a playoff spot, and then they end up finishing the season at New England. So if I did my math right, I have them losing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That would put them at about 7-10. I think that's pretty realistic for a team that honestly is probably going to take a pretty big step back, considering the fact that they cut their entire defensive secondary. They lost a lot of key offensive pieces as well. So I'm probably going to give them 7-10 record to end the season. We'll move to the second team that's expected to actually do pretty well and could potentially win the division away from Buffalo. They were in the driver's seat last year. They just had to win one more game. Unfortunately, couldn't do it, mainly because Miami doesn't do well in the cold. Looking at Miami's schedule, they start out hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm probably going to give Miami the win. Of course, they host Buffalo. I'll give Miami the win at that. Then they travel to Seattle early in the season. However, it'll be a little bit warmer there, so they won't have to deal with the cold weather environment. I could easily see Miami starting off 3-0 there. Then they host Tennessee. Again, Tennessee has a lot of new pieces. This will be Will Levis's first true year of being the full-time starter. Will he be able to live up to the potential or not? Maybe. That Miami defense is definitely taking a step back, so the potential for him to do really well is there. And then they end up actually going to New England in early October. So they could actually walk out of this at 5-0 right when their bye week happens. They unfortunately get a pretty early bye week in the season. They come out of the bye. They have to go to Indianapolis. I am going to probably give Miami the win in that as well, just because offensive firepower wise, I think it'll be better. Again, there's a lot of questions with Anthony Richardson if he can stay healthy or not. He got hurt early last season, but hopefully he's been able to take care of himself a little bit better. Then they host Arizona, so they could be 7-0 by the time they finish with Arizona. Then they go to Buffalo in November. It's a little bit chillier, so maybe a little bit more of a pain as far as competing with them. So I'm going to give them I think if I remember right with the Bills, I gave them a loss in that. So I'm going to put them at, I believe that's 7-1. Then they go to the Rams. They're inside. They're indoors. It'll be a pretty warm game, so I'll give them a win at that. Then they host the Raiders. I'll give Miami the win. Then they host New England, Miami a win. So they're sitting at 9-1. Then they have to go to Lambeau. Jordan Love is expected to take another potential step going forward. Green Bay's a pretty talented team. Defensively, they were still pretty good. And again, Miami typically doesn't do well in the cold, and especially going up to Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they're going to be freezing. So I'm going to have Miami lose that game, sitting at 9-2. Then they host the Jets. I'm going to give them a win. I'll have them split that series with them. So they'll be sitting at 10-2. Then they go to the Texans. I'm going to have them lose that game. I think CJ Stroud, again, continues to take that step forward, as well as the rest of the Houston Texans team with DeMeco Ryans. Stephon Diggs should hopefully be getting into pretty well postseason form there. They should still have Nico Collins as well as Tank Dell, and Houston absolutely stacked themselves on defense. So I'm going to give Houston that win. So they should be sitting there at about 10-3. Then they have to host the 49ers. This will be interesting considering Mike McDaniel comes from the Kyle Shanahan tree. San Francisco is also looking for a bit of a revenge tour. I think defensively, Miami's going to have a really hard time stopping that offense, especially with some of the pieces that they cut and lost throughout the offseason. So I'm going to give them a loss there. So they'll be sitting at about, if I remember correctly, 10-4 or 10-5. No, 11-5, sorry. Then they go to Cleveland on December 29th, so that'll probably be freezing. So I'm going to put them at about 10-6, and then they finish at the Jets. I think this might potentially be even for the division, if not for their playoff lives. So I would probably, like I said, I'm going to split them. So they're going to be sitting there at about 10-7. Don't be surprised, though, if they don't actually play pretty hard and maybe try to figure out this whole cold weather thing to at least end up sweeping the Jets and being there, sitting there at, they would be then 11-6 with a pretty high chance of being able to make the playoffs, especially in an AFC that the Houston Texans are probably going to be pretty decent. You know, you've always got Kansas City. The Chargers are supposed to be better, as well as Denver. Then, of course, you have the entirety of the AFC North. Any one of those four could potentially win their division, as well as be a second wild card team. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. Come back, I will give my schedule predictions for the New York Jets as well as the New England Patriots. So we will be right back.
Department of Veterans Affairs. For PSAs on the best services available to veterans, go to VA's new radio outreach page, news.va.gov/outreach/radio.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, giving veterans a voice. Again, if you'd like to learn more, or if you'd like to potentially donate and figure out what they do, or if you're a veteran looking to potentially start a podcast, want your voice to be heard, or have any questions, please scan that little QR code right there underneath me, and that'll be able to help give you more information on that. So we are back, and we are going to break down a little bit more on the upcoming 2024 NFL schedule for the AFC East teams. Next, we have the New England Patriots. I've had a lot of questions about the Patriots considering the fact they drafted Drake May. I wasn't entirely sold on him out of college, coming out of UNC. Freshman year, he did really well as far as winning the ACC goes. However, I never really saw him take the next step moving forward. The UNC kind of took a little bit of a step back last year. It was actually his second full year starting, and he ended up actually declaring for the draft, being the number 3 overall pick to New England after they traded away Mac Jones. So it will be interesting to see how well he can do with New England, considering they have one of the worst offenses in the league. Offensive line-wise, they're stout. However, at wide receiver and running back wise, there's a lot of questions, though. They actually start out the season going to Cincinnati to face Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I do actually think this is going to be a little bit of a toss-up just because the Bengals and Joe Burrow always start out slow. But overall, though, Joe Burrow is going to be coming back. This will be his first game, post wrist injury as well as ACL injury. So I think he'll probably come out pretty well. And the Bengals overall, I think, are a better team. So I'm going to give New England a loss there. Then they host Seattle. I think the same thing. Overall, talent-wise, experience-wise, Seattle is a better roster. Defensively, I think New England will be able to keep themselves in the game. However, I'm probably still going to give the edge to Seattle. Then they travel to New York to face technically New Jersey to face the Jets. I'm probably going to give the Jets the win there. Then they have to travel to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. That is more than likely going to be a very easy loss for them as well. So I'm going to have them starting out so far 0-4. Then they host Miami in October. It's probably going to be another loss, as well as the Houston Texans. That'll probably be another loss before jumping across the pond over into London to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, that'll probably be one more loss just because Trevor Lawrence is going to be a lot more experienced as well. He and Brian Thomas should be in their rhythm, as well as Trevor Etienne. So far, I don't see the Drake May era as well as the Gerard Mayo era post Bill Belichick and post Tom Brady starting off very well for Jacksonville. Then they host the Jets. Again, I think the Jets sweep them this year. On paper, everything says the Jets should win. We'll see how it actually goes when this season plays out. Defensively, I think they'll be very much in the game. However, offensively, those where I have a lot of questions. Now, the first game I could potentially see them having a win at, they actually go to Tennessee, believe it or not. I would potentially have them winning the game. Again, I'm not entirely sold on Will Levis. I don't really know what to expect, as well as I don't know what to expect as far as the coaching out of Tennessee. So this, to me, is more of an even-matched game. I would give the edge to Tennessee's offense, but I'll give the edge to New England's defense, as well as their counterparts kind of cancel each other out. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think New England finally gets their first win there at Tennessee. Then they have to travel to Chicago to take on the Bears. I'm going to say the Bears win with Caleb Williams. By then, he should be in a pretty decent rhythm, pretty decent role. And with the Bears' offensive firepower, they should be better. Then they host the Rams. I'm going to give the Rams a win. Then they have to travel to Miami to take on the Dolphins. I'm going to give Miami the win. And then they host the Colts. Always a tough divisional game. Well, not divisional game anymore, but always a tough rivalry game for the Colts. Again, offensively, overall, I would give the Colts a definite edge over New England, especially because offensively, I just do not trust I believe it's Traylon Polk is their number 1 wide receiver, as well as Kendrick Bourne and whatnot. I don't really see New England being able to match that, as well as Indianapolis's defense has been one of the top defenses for the last 5 seasons. So they're going to be coming into 1 win the whole season so far as they come into their bye week. They come out of their bye, then they go to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. I think this might also be a win for them. I know Arizona has Kyler Murray, so they have the better quarterback. They also got Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft, but I don't necessarily see Arizona's defense being able to handle as well as their offense. I don't know how well it's going to be able to succeed against a pretty decent New England defense that, for all of their struggles, their defense has still been a pretty good bright spot for them over the last few years. They also finished the season having to go to Buffalo. I'm going to give them a loss in that. Then they host the Chargers. The Chargers will be interesting to see how they do with Justin Herbert as well as Jim Harbaugh as the head coach. The Chargers have a lot of question marks as far as wide receiver goes, so I don't really expect them to be doing that great. as well as it'll be in the cold. So I'll probably still give the Chargers the win, but I'll expect that game to be close. Then they finish the season hosting the Bills, which I still think that they'll take another loss. So I only have them winning about 2 or 3 games this year. I expect pretty bad year and pretty dark times for New England still, as they try to get things figured out. Cap-wise, they're still in a pretty good spot, as well as this past offseason and into next season. They should have some of the most cap space out of any team in the NFL. So hopefully by next season, between probably a number 1 overall pick, as well as a pretty high draft capital, they should do pretty decent. And then to finish off the show, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and his New York Jets and their schedule that they have. They start out pretty rough and they end the season on kind of a softer note. But nonetheless, they have to start off the very first season, Monday Night Football, at San Francisco against the 49ers. Leonard Floyd, the individual who actually caused Aaron to run and end up actually tearing his Achilles, is now on the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to give the 49ers a win. This will be Aaron's first game back. There's still going to be a lot of rustiness from Aaron because he hasn't played for over a year. He still has to develop some of that chemistry between he and his wide receivers. So it'll be probably a bumpy start for them. Then they travel to Tennessee. I think they'll probably get the win there just because the Titans' new offense, new coach. Can Will Levis actually move on or not? Then they host New England. I'm going to give the Jets the win on that one. Then they host the Broncos. They actually won this game last year. Denver is going to be taking a step back. They no longer have Russell Wilson. They have Bo Nix as the starter. And I think Denver is going to continue to struggle as Sean Payton tries to figure out how to piece that offense together to make them a truly viable team. Then they go to Minnesota. I think that's going to be a pretty easy win for them, albeit it is going to be in London, however, to face the Vikings. I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to be the starter by then. More than likely, it's going to be Sam Darnold, who the former starter of this Jets team, a lot of the same guys that he played with, will be there to face him. So if anything, they probably know Sam Darnold better than any other team in the league. So I think they'll probably get a pretty good win over the Minnesota Vikings. Then they host the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to give the Jets the win on that. They go to Pittsburgh to take on Russ and the Steelers. Now, that Steelers defense is really, really good, even though their offense will probably struggle. I'm going to give Pittsburgh the win on this one, purely because I don't think that Jets offensive line is going to be able to handle all the acquisitions that Pittsburgh was able to get this past offseason with TJ Watt. They have Patrick Queen. Their secondary is still absolutely loaded, so I'm going to give them a loss to Pittsburgh. Then they go to New England. Again, they should win that. They have to host Houston. Now, if I remember right, they actually shut Houston out last year, even with Zach Wilson. This is one of those, the Houston Texans kind of, slipped up a little bit. I think they saw this as more of probably an easy game and ended up actually being a trap game for them. So I think Houston gets a pretty good revenge game. So I'm going to give them the Jets a loss on that. They go to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. The Jets should win that one. Then they host the Colts. Again, that will be interesting as far as if Anthony Richardson's healthy or not. That Colts defense is pretty solid, but I do think they could make things rough for Aaron, but I will give the Jets the win on that. They go into their bye week. As they come out, they will host the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to probably still give the Jets the win on that one just because Seattle's defense also needs to take a step up, and I don't know if they're necessarily going to be able to do that. They travel to Miami. Like I said, they'll probably lose that just because Miami's at home and they do pretty well at home. Then they immediately turn around and go to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. I'll give the Jets the win on that. They host the Rams, albeit I think the Rams can do pretty well. I don't see them losing to them. Then they go to Buffalo. Like I said, this may potentially be for the divisional title, if not a for sure playoff spot against Buffalo. So expect that one to be pretty difficult. I'm probably still going to give Buffalo the win, though. Then they end up hosting Miami at the very end in the cold weather. And even then, that could also be for the division, if not for the very last playoff spot. So I only have them losing against the 49ers, against the Steelers, against the Texans, potentially against the Colts and the Dolphins. So they should be sitting at about 12-5 or so before the end of the season. I think that's a pretty realistic goal for the Jets. I do think they could get into the playoffs. I don't see them being a top seed, maybe the 5th seed overall, but I don't really see them making a huge, super deep run for them. But nonetheless, though, it'll be an exciting time. I'm excited to see what the AFC East is able to do this year. There's a lot of changes that happen with a lot of these teams. A lot of these teams kind of all of last year. They're not able to do so this year, so it'll be interesting to see what we do. I appreciate everybody tuning in, though. Please like, share, subscribe to not only myself at Inside the Hoosier Mind, but also to Military Broadcast Radio. It does do a great thing for my fellow veterans and whatnot, as far as helping them get a voice, helping get their voice out there. There's a lot of great products. There are a lot of great people that help put on a lot of great content, and it really helps them out quite a bit. But appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will be back next week. Everybody have a great night.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting MBR in any way, form that you can. Use this QR code that's attached to the picture, or you can go to our website at mbradio.us. That's Mike Bravo Radio.us to learn more about how you can donate or volunteer even just an hour a week from your home. Help make a difference in the lives of our veterans, because once again, we're all here for you and not for us. We're giving our veterans a voice.